Have you ever felt completely lost trying to pick a pair of FPV goggles, terrified that you just waste tons of money on something that you're gonna outgrow in months? I know I certainly have, and as it turns out, I wasn't alone with this thought either. I asked hundreds of other beginners who collectively said that their biggest concerns were overspending on a pair of goggles and making sure that they're actually future-proof. So in today's video, I'm going to show you whether this pair of FPV goggles solves these concerns, explore everything that I love and hate about them, then finally find out whether they're the holy grail of beginner goggles or just another pair that you're going to regret buying. Before we can get to any of that though, what the hell even are these goggles?
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
These are the HD0 Box Pro goggles, and if you're like me, you might assume that they're just another confusing choice to add to your FPV overwhelm. But these goggles actually have something special up their sleeve that I genuinely wish I had when I started out. So let's jump straight on into the things that I love about them. And to keep it all crystal clear, I'll rate each feature out of 10 based specifically on what beginners actually care about. So first up, my favorite feature, which strangely enough, a lot of experienced FPV pilots probably won't even think twice or care about this one. But it's a game changer, especially if you're new to FPV. How often have you looked for a new FPV drone, seen there's a cheaper version and an expensive version? The cheaper one generally uses an analog system and the expensive one generally uses an HD system. Obviously, HD sounds way more exciting, but you know, the budget can only stretch so far, so you end up going for the cheaper analog drone. Along with this purchase, you realize you now need a pair of goggles that works with an analog camera system. This is where things get a bit confusing, but bear with me, everything will make sense in just a moment. Your options here are, number one, buy a crappy pair of analog goggles that you know you'll have to upgrade later on when they break. Number two, buy an expensive pair of analog goggles that lock you into analog only, but at least they're quality, right? Number three, buy a more expensive pair of HD goggles that allows you to add on analog, but that costs even more money and is an extra step to get working. You're stuck choosing between cheap analog goggles that break quickly, expensive analog only goggles that you'll outgrow, or pricey HD goggles that lock you into a single system. But what if there is an option that eliminated these trade-offs completely? Enter the Box Pro goggles. These are one of the only quality HD goggles that come with built-in analog capability, and they do all of this for just $300. That means you're getting analog video capability, which is lower quality visually but cheaper and perfect for learning. And then you've got HD, which is clearer, more immersive, and looks incredible, all in the same goggles at a surprisingly affordable price. Most beginners start with analog and then later upgrade to HD when they're ready, so having both options built into these $300 goggles makes this feature an easy 10 out of 10 for me. But hold on, let's be real. $300 still is not pocket change, so let's quickly break down the cost to find out whether they're truly worth it or just an unnecessary luxury. If we look at analog-only FPV goggles, they range from as low as $70 with the Beta FPV VR03s to around $250 for the SkyZone Cobra X's, all the way up to $600 for top-tier Fat Shark HDO Plus goggles. You might be thinking, right, so shouldn't I just get the Beta FPV VR03s then? Not quite. Hear me out. All of those goggles I just mentioned are only capable of running analog. That means absolutely no HD system can be used with them. So if you wanted to upgrade to HD in the future, you'd also be needing to buy a new pair of HD goggles then. Speaking of which, we have DJI, Walksnail, and HD0 as established HD systems currently. The cheapest HD goggles you can buy are DJI's N3 goggles at $220, but a massive word of warning here, if you buy these, you can only fly with DJI HD systems. Think of DJI as Apple. They're great, but you're locked into their gear only. If you go DJI goggles, you must use DJI drones, DJI cameras, and DJI parts exclusively. There is no analog, and there is also no compatibility with any other system. So you'll end up paying significantly more later on when you're buying their proprietary gear. That basically leaves us with Walksnail and HD0. Currently, you can pick up a pair of Walksnail goggles for as cheap as $200, but very similar to DJI, you're locked in with the Walksnail system only. That means if you want the option to run an HD system and also be able to use analog too, you'll be buying the Walksnail Goggles X at $450 or the flagship HD0 goggles at $600, both of which don't include an analog receiver, so well, there goes another $150 at least. Think of FPV goggles like gaming consoles. Imagine your PlayStation could suddenly run Xbox and Nintendo games just by plugging in a small attachment. And well, that's exactly what these goggles let you do. They're your universal console for analog, HD0, and even Walksnail HD if you buy their VRX to add on. It's seriously insane that this all comes in at $300, so for this fact, I am rating it a 9 out of 10. Before you pull out your wallet though, let's talk about comfort, because let's be real, if your goggles feel terrible, nothing else really matters. Generally, box goggles are known to be pretty meh when it comes to fitting different face shapes, and I have tried enough box goggles to know that this is true, as none of them are that nice to wear. The Box Pros, however, are the best fitting box goggles that I've ever worn, but they are still far from perfect. They push my nose down a bit and certainly feel front heavy, which, to be fair, is something that we've come to expect from box goggles. So the top strap is definitely a good idea, as it does help distribute a bit of the weight, and it also fits my reasonably large glasses inside of it too. You can buy additional diopter inserts, but to be honest, using them with my glasses is perfectly fine. Overall, I'll give comfort a 6 out of 10. It's good as it comes, but I think the foam needs to be swapped out to something of higher quality. But look, comfort alone isn't going to matter if the screen looks like garbage, so here's what your eyeballs will actually experience when you fly with these goggles. You'll notice the screen kind of feels like you're watching a TV in your own personal box, which, thinking about it, is probably a pretty accurate description of what's actually happening. Speaking of the screen, however, it's bright and looks very high quality from what I can tell, plus it's also got the benefit of having a 100 Hz refresh rate. All that means is that the screen's frame rate is changing 100 times a second, whereas generally most low to mid-tier goggles are around the 60 Hz range. Honestly, I don't think that most people are going to notice if they've never had a high refresh rate before, but as you start flying faster, the additional frames on screen might be able to help out. At least that's what I'm told by the racers. I can barely tell the difference. Just so you're aware too, the actual immersion that you feel when flying these is right on up there. Those walls kind of blend into nothing and your brain focuses on the screen only. So I'll give the viewing experience a solid 7 out of 10. If you've never used a flagship pair of binocular goggles, you'll honestly never think twice about it. But none of this actually matters if the goggles are a pain to set up or use. The last thing you want as a beginner is for it to be complicated, so how user-friendly are these goggles really? If you've ever watched a video on the flagship HD0 goggles, you know that the user experience is simple, straightforward, and it just works as it should. Simple means menus are easy to navigate, updating software is hassle-free, and it won't take a week on YouTube just to figure out how to turn the damn thing on. The exact same software is used here in the Box Pro goggles, so that means the user experience is identical to that of the flagship. Simple, straightforward, and it just works as it should. 7 out of 10. Now, real quick, before we get into the stuff that I don't like about these goggles, I debated even mentioning this next bit because honestly, most beginners won't need it at all. But just so you're aware, there is another version of these goggles called the Box Pro Plus. In fact, this is actually the Box Pro Plus, and it's completely identical in almost every way, aside from costing an extra $50. But you also get built-in Wi-Fi streaming so friends can watch your flights live on your phone, and something called ELRS backpack support. That's basically a remote control integration feature which I have never used once in my life. Streaming my flights over Wi-Fi hasn't mattered much either because, I mean, honestly, everyone that I'm flying with already has their own goggles to watch with. So unless you're certain that these features are crucial for you, just save the $50 and stick with the standard Box Pros. Alright, with that quick detour out the way, let's get into what I really didn't like about these goggles because nothing's perfect, especially in FPV. When you receive the Box Pro goggles, they come with the foam and the stick-on Velcro separate to the goggles themselves. This seems pretty harmless, and it kind of is, but my concern is this. You know when you buy Lego and have to carefully line up the tiny sticker just right and one shaky finger just ruins the whole damn thing? Well, attaching foam pads to these goggles gave me the exact same sweaty palm stress. If you're like me, you'll spend a good 10 minutes just lining things up and hoping that you have it right. My issue is that basically every other pair of goggles comes with the foam padding attached, and sometimes they even come with a nicer quality foam too. It's minor, sure, but first impressions do matter, especially when you're already nervous about FPV. Having something you can simply pull out the box and use is a massive bonus, and I think these goggles would benefit a lot from that. Speaking of using out of the box though, we run into our second issue. Now, this is a common trend with most goggles in the past, but buying goggles without a battery included is like buying a phone without a charger. DJI figured this out years ago. The goggles arrive, you plug them in with USB-C, and you're done. With the Box Pros though, you're left figuring out your own power solution, just adding an extra step and potentially causing an unnecessary headache if you buy the wrong battery. I recommend something simple like a 3S lithium-ion battery, which is easy to find, but look, it is just another step beginners have to navigate. To give credit where credit is due though, they have included all the antennas needed to use, which is a huge step forward from their last goggle release, so kudos for that, it doesn't go unnoticed. But yeah, that's it. Like, seriously, after using these goggles and really trying to find an issue, that was the best I could come up with. So that leaves us with 3 critical questions. How do we know these goggles are actually future-proof? How can we be sure we aren't overspending on these? And are they actually worth buying as a beginner, or should they just be left for the pros? So here's the problem. FPV tech changes ridiculously fast. So how do you know that these goggles won't become useless in a year or 2? Well, it's pretty simple really. Upgrading or changing video systems with these goggles is as easy as like plugging in a USB stick. Just attach a VRX module onto your goggles, connect a cable, and you're flying in seconds. Want to run WalkSnail HD? Just buy, plug, and fly. What about when a new HD system arrives next year or something? Well, just plug that in too. It means you're never locked out unless you go DJI. So if that's not future-proof, I don't know what the heck is. But wait, how can we be sure $300 isn't overspending? After all, isn't it smarter to buy cheaper goggles first? Well, actually, I think it's kind of the opposite. It's like buying a new phone. Sure, you could buy the cheapest phone today, but in 6 months, you're just gonna crave an upgrade. Why not just buy the affordable one now that does everything that you want it to do? That's the Box Pro goggles. Every dollar spent on analog-only goggles today is another dollar wasted tomorrow when you inevitably upgrade to a better camera system. So buying these goggles first means never throwing money away again, and you can't get much better than that. But now for the biggest question. Are these goggles actually worth it for a beginner, or is it smarter to hold off until later down the road? I believe these goggles are perfect if you want something that is quality and something that isn't going to hold you back as you grow. But look, if you're dead set on DJI, or if you're willing to pay hundreds more for the top of the line features that you probably don't even need yet, these aren't for you. For everyone else though, the beginners who want to grow with your gear without draining your wallet, it's a no-brainer. They're literally the smartest first FPV goggles money can buy. I've got a link to my FPV store made specifically for beginners down below, so if you want to pick yourself up a pair, you know where to find it. But even with perfect goggles, you won't get better just by flying more. In fact, just trying harder might be exactly what's holding you back. So click here because there's a smarter way to practice that'll help you master FPV faster than ever before.